awareness as well as the ability to relax and be composed. It reflects when we make those changes and become more mindful. What are some of the other biological phenomena that actually change? Like, for example, I'm really interested that um, how how does it change with something like as basic as food, for example? Like when actually that's basic and as it's a huge problem now, uh, um, given that and especially for children, given that our food supply chain, like everything is becoming more and more efficient. Probably food supply chain is the only thing that's becoming more efficient, but at the same time degrading at the fastest rate possible in the future, in the past, right? And ever in the history of human history, right? Basically, one of those things would love to really understand from your perspective. What are some of the second, third order effects of the food ecosystem around children, and what are you seeing there?
Yeah, well, food is one of the things that I'm extremely interested in, both in my own life and in my work. And then the idea of just what happens in the system and how mindfulness and awareness can help. That also is something that's key. So let me start with that because that's probably the fastest, which is what happens is that when we are worked up, when our nervous systems are worked up, our capacity to be able to hold strong emotions and our capacity to think clearly decreases. And it's just plain old fight or flight. That's just how our systems work. You know, we go into a survival mode, and that survival mode limits our ability to think conceptually and goes back into survival mode of taking care of ourselves. And that's not just what we see so often as far as people kind of getting out of control. It's also, that is more of the flight piece, but there's also the freeze piece. And so that's what's often missed with kids whose response to too much stimulation, to too much input, is not to sort of thrash around, but to withdraw. And so often kids are thought of just as being shy, or sometimes they're thought of being defiant. You see a teenage kid like this, they think, oh, he's defiant. Well, no, maybe it's just a little overwhelmed and it's too much. So what mindfulness and awareness can do is by helping kids and adults learn that when we move our attention away from thinking about whatever the stimulus is, from thinking about what's upsetting us to the sensation, to the actual experience, usually in our body, that has an effect of calming and grounding and lowering the heart rate. And then that fight or flight sort of settles back in, and then we can see things clearly and we can understand. So when you're with a child or when you're with an adult and you see that they're all worked up, trying to get into a discussion with them calmly about what actually happened is a little bit counterproductive because they just don't yet have the capacity. They're in some kind of survival mode. Another aspect of this type of a bias that we have that is a survival mode is the negativity bias, where we are actually wired to focus more on what's scaring us, what's threatening us, rather than to focus on the good. So we, again, if we bring awareness to that and a sense of humor, oh, I'm Susan, there I go again. I'm focusing on that silly thing that happened when somebody made fun of the sweater I was wearing, instead of focusing on all the other wonderful things that happened at that party. But no, I focus on the one bad one. Keep a sense of humor about it. Oh, that's just the negativity bias. And then do your best to heighten the good. That is another way of balancing these very helpful, very useful survival instincts that we need. They're not bad. We need them to survive, but sometimes they get a little bit misdirected in the modern world. So that's the piece that is really the starting place for mindfulness and awareness practices with kids and with their parents and teachers. As far as food, again, it's like awareness is key, and not just awareness as far as cognitive understanding or intellectual understanding, but awareness of the connection between our mind and our body. Oh yeah, when I eat that wonderful frosted cinnamon bun that smells so great, initially it's just fantastic. I love sweets. It's just fantastic. But oh wait, like 10 minutes later, I've got a lump in my stomach. My energy is completely dropped a little bit later. You start to make those connections, and then those connections go all the way back to how was this food grown? How was it actually brought to me? How was it processed? How many ingredients are in this loaf of bread, and how many of them can I pronounce? How many of them are ingredients that I can't even imagine what it looked like in the real world? And when you start bringing that level of attention to what you're putting in your body, everything starts to shift. So keeping, again, the idea around food and awareness really simple. It doesn't have to be complicated. We don't have to have a lot of rules. We just have to have common sense and awareness. I mean, does this look like anything? Does this supposedly milk-like product, is it anything a cow would ever recognize? If not, probably better to pass it by, that sort of thing. And just bringing awareness to what we're eating, where it came from, and then key is how it makes us feel.
Absolutely. I think this is probably one of the best ways to understand uh, like how we interact with our daily lifestyle elements. Like for example, uh, when we speak, like I think if you speak to anybody about diets, in this case, any dietary system out there, most dietary systems are restrictive, and what we've seen is that they end up actually spoiling the relationship with food, because then people don't see food as a way of life, or being a critical part of their life, but something that they can enjoy, or they start seeing it as a compulsion in some ways, that oh, I have to eat within these many calories, I have to basically get these macros in. It's not bad. I mean, potentially doing it in a mindful way is probably the right way to do things. But then developing that instinct and not sort of like bringing that constraint to your life, so that you don't become robotic about your life experiences, is probably going to be the key. And it's funny because I think what we do is actually make this human and robot connection happen in a much better way, so that you actually develop those instincts in a much better way. So in our case also, the ideal outcome is that people end up developing those instincts. So for example, if you have the same example, your favorite ice cream, and and it actually gives you a glucose spike and a glucose crash. Now that is going to make you lethargic. Now the problem is that a lot of people do have the awareness, which is cool, which is amazing, right? But a lot of people don't as well. A lot of people don't understand what really caused this problem and to what extent. Um, we are really good at understanding the here and now, but maybe not longitudinal data, which is like how many times per week, how many times per month, and how frequent is that. One of the biggest, you can say, discoveries that people have is not that they got a spike from an ice cream. That's actually quite predictable, right? But actually, how many times they got it in a month? Maybe just making that from 10 times a month to 5 times a month and having the same experience or similar experience is going to change their life. Um, and eventually develop that instinct yourself. Like, why do you need a machine eventually, right? But yeah, I think that's a journey for a lot of individuals.
Yeah. No, I love what you're saying. And I'm a big fan of these wearables and the types of products that you're creating, because they do, if they're skillfully used and not used as, if they're skillfully used, then what they really do is they promote awareness, right? And really, awareness is the gateway to all transformation and all change. So these types of wearables will promote, oh, geez, I didn't realize that I did fill in the blank, or oh, wow, I didn't realize that I have, walked so many steps today, just by being in the house. I didn't even leave the house, but look, I walked this many steps. And that kind of awareness, oh geez, I didn't realize that I was in front of the computer for so long and I hadn't moved. So that building of awareness is fantastic. The other thing about food that I think is really key, and not just for children, but of course for children too, is just to bring back our love and our enjoyment of food. Because it's, I love food. I look forward to what I'm going to eat every single day. I look forward to what I'm going to have for breakfast. I look forward to evening. But I really do love food, but I love clean food. I love food that isn't processed. So learning to love food and and developing a relationship of really enjoying food that is pretty good for you, and enjoying it when you have a little treat that may not be so good for you, and building back that just true playfulness and fun and love for food in a healthy way, I think is really important, and I think it's really, really doable.
I think what I really appreciate in this statement is that you actually used love as a way to find peace with something, right? For example, um, in case of food, if you can actually figure out the right balance in life, which comes with love sometimes, like you really look forward to it, so you will look forward to a better experience, and that better experience will come with finding cleaner options, finding options that are more sustainable for you, and not something that makes you feel terrible, right? It's I mean, what you learn in life and what you learn in maybe eating your favorite food probably is the same thing. Uh, that's really really interesting. Um, do you do you see, especially in children, the some of the aspects of, given the fact that the child obesity is a mega disaster in making, and it's a mega crisis. Do you see eating disorders, issues like eating disorders, and uh, given that our definition of how we look at food is changing, um, given the processed food industry and the convenience that we want to associate with the food, uh, how do you actually, like, what's your approach towards solving some of those, or interfacing with some of those when that happens?
Yeah. Well, a lot of it is parent education because, again, the parent anxiety in some cases or the parent lack of education uh, just, again, has a ripple effect on the children. It makes the children feel uh, something that things are being taken away as opposed to things are being offered to them. It makes them nervous because they see that their parents are nervous. And then also, I was raised in the Midwest of America. I was born in the 1950s. I mean, food was love, and that was what it was. My mother, baking was huge. White flour, sugar, butter, sometimes lard, and that was their way of showing love. So you start to connect that really, really early on. And food is love is a fantastic thing, but the food that you're giving your children can still be an expression of love, and it can still be delicious but not but be healthy for you. And so the parental awareness around that, giving kids lots of choices, lots of delicious choices that they can choose from that are good for them. But there's another piece, again, is the awareness piece. So there have been different programs that I've done around mindful eating where we created awareness meters specifically for food. So something like a fullness meter. A fullness meter is where you kind of get a sense before you're going to eat, am I full? How do I feel? So you build awareness of, am I eating just eating, or do I feel full? And then am I going to eat? So a fullness meter, a taste meter. How does this feel? How does this taste? So really starting to take things apart in a fun and playful way. To bring awareness not just to what you're putting in your mouth, but how your body is feeling. Because that is really the key to so much of the meditation or awareness-based approaches to life, is just really making the connection between your mind and your body and seeing in real time how your mind changes your body and your body changes your mind. And so really bringing awareness to how full I am. Does this feel good? Does this not feel good? That sort of stuff goes a long way to helping kids regulate themselves.
Wow, this is really cool. It's almost like you the what we're trying to do by machines. If you can develop that instinct very very early, probably that's even way more powerful. You have the ability to, if you can develop your own instincts and your own muscle memory around what's good for you, there's a very high chance that you'll end up making the right decision. So that's really, really cool. And I think I'm glad that you mentioned that this is uh, this is actually work for parents, um, given the fact that they are the ones who are actually molding or shaping, or children are observing their parents to understand how the world around them actually works. And there's a very high chance, by the way, that I mean, there's a 99% chance that the podcast will be listened to by the parents, of course, uh, or potential parents. So I would love to ask you your one hack for the parents, like let's say the easiest thing that a parent can do every day um, to actually like get started on this journey of mindfulness.